please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Good morning and welcome to Power Breakfast in the Mumbai News Center. I am Anisha Jain and with me is Nigel D'Souza. Well, good morning, Nigel. For the Indian market, the domestic use is just the earnings. But look at so much happening in the global setup. The Bank of England has gone ahead and raised the interest rates. In the US markets, we have Jerome Powell that has been finally announced as the next US Fed chair. And also the new tax reform has been put on the table.
Absolutely, Anisha. Very good. Summed it up perfectly, Anisha. But I'm also looking at the FI flow as well. After selling for the last few months, in fact, the FI, suddenly they're pumping in more than 1,000 crores in the last couple of trading sessions on a per-day basis. So that looks quite good as well. But plenty to discuss. First up, let's run you through all the top stories at this point of time.
It is my pleasure and my honor to announce my nomination of Jerome Powell to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve.
While U.S. President Donald Trump nominates Jerome Powell to chair the Federal Reserve and succeed Janet Yellen, whose term expires on February 3rd, Powell lauds economy's progress and pledges to guard against financial market risks.
And the Republicans unveiled the long-delayed legislation to deliver deep tax cuts that President Donald Trump had promised. The Dow closes at record highs. The Asian markets, they open on a positive footing. Focus shifts to the jobs report that's due in the United States later today.
Vedanta posts a mixed quarter as higher aluminum prices are offset by higher input costs. Copper stands out and international zinc also delivers. Power grid earnings come in line with estimates, mild surprise coming on the margins despite higher employee costs. And Glenmark's revenue and EBITDA are impacted by lower US LATAM sales.
And watch out for Hindalco today. Its subsidiary Novelis delivers an earnings beat. Higher realizations and volumes will lead its domestic results that are due later today. For Tata Power, expect generation volumes to remain sluggish while realizations are seen flattish. Titan and PNB also report their earnings later today.
Also on the show today, great news coming in for all the Apple fans as new iPhone X is set for its global launch today. More details in just a bit.
Well, Asian markets are more or less high in early trade after the US markets. They closed mixed. Investors digested the release of the House of Republicans' tax reform plan and President Trump's nomination of Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Governor, to be the next head of the central bank. Remember, markets in Japan are closed today on account of Culture Day. We have the Kospi, that's absolutely as flat as can be. But let's pull up the other couple of markets as well that have just opened up. The Taiwanese index as well as the Straits. Well, it's a mixed start really. The Straits, in fact, has moved into the red. What does this mean for the SGX Nifty? Well, that's indicating maybe a mildly positive start is what we could brace ourselves for.
Okay, let's talk about the important news coming in from the United States. The suspense as to who will succeed Janet Yellen as the chief of the Federal Reserve has finally come to an end. The President Donald Trump has nominated Jerome Powell to run the Federal Reserve.
We are to sustain all of this tremendous economic progress. Our economy requires sound monetary policy and prudent oversight of our banking system. That is why we need strong, sound, and steady leadership at the United States Federal Reserve. I have nominated Jay to be our next federal chairman, and so important because he will provide exactly that type of leadership. He's strong, he's committed, he's smart. And if he is confirmed by the Senate, Jay will put his considerable talents and experience to work leading our nation's independent central bank.
Okay, on Wall Street, U.S. equities closed mostly higher as investors examine the details of the tax reform plan proposed by the Republicans. Now, Dow rose to record highs after release of tax reform bill and Powell's nomination as the next Fed chair. The S&P 500 closed marginally higher, supported by gains that we saw in the financial stocks. However, if you look at the Nasdaq, that one underperformed a bit. CNBC's Hamden Pearson gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
All eyes on Wall Street focused on two major Washington stories today. House Republicans unveiling their long-awaited tax reform plan, potentially the biggest tax overhaul in 30 years, but little market reaction. However, a different story with President Donald Trump nominating Fed Governor Jerome Powell to replace Janet Yellen as chairman of the Federal Reserve.
Jay will also bring to the Fed a unique background of prior government service and business experience. He previously served as Undersecretary at the Department of Treasury in the administration of President George H.W. Bush. And just like William McChesney Martin, the longest-serving chairman in Federal Reserve history, Jay will bring extensive private sector experience and real-world perspective to our government.
In the final hour of trading after the Powell announcement, the Dow moved higher to still another record. Mixed results for the S&P and the NASDAQ.
I'm both honored and humbled by this opportunity to serve our great country. If I am confirmed by the Senate, I will do everything within my power to achieve our congressionally assigned goals of stable prices and maximum employment.
Powell, who was appointed by President Obama 5 years ago, is expected to have few obstacles on the road to confirmation by the Senate. Back over to you.
Well, let's also listen into what former senior Fed officials had to say on Powell's nomination as the next Fed chair.
What he brings to bear here, in addition to understanding how this monetary policy evolved after the correction, after the crash, is an understanding of financial markets, which Ben Bernanke, who I served under, Janet Yellen, who I adored serving under, both of them, neither of them came from the capital market side. And it wasn't just McChesney Martin that didn't have a PhD in economics. Paul Volcker didn't have a PhD in economics. So that's not requisite here, and I think Jay has learned an enormous amount. But bringing the capital market sensitivity here, he contributed on that front to all of our discussions starting in 2012 when he joined in a very wise manner.
With respect to regulation, he may think that he got somebody more in sync with the Republican agenda on regulation. What he got was somebody in sync with the current Fed position, which is for substantial rollbacks in terms of less burden on small and medium-sized banks, rethinking the Volcker rule, but dead set on retaining the core. I think one of the most important things is how he differs. And he differs in the sense that, unlike Bernanke and Yellen, he's not a rock star in the economics community as a monetary policy expert. He'll be a superb consensus builder, absolutely tireless and superb, and a great communicator of the consensus.
Well, the U.S. tax reform bill is finally out. The House of Republicans unveiled plans to cut the nation's corporate tax to 20%, phase out the estate tax, halve the home mortgage interest deduction from new purchase, reduce the number of individuals, brackets, and impose levy of up to 12% on multinational firms overseas. Let's go across to a report that was filed by CNBC.
Republicans are calling this the most comprehensive tax reform in a generation. It would lower the corporate rate from 35% to 20%, and that would happen right away, and that reduction would be permanent. It also establishes new repatriation rates, 12% on cash and 5% on non-cash assets, and companies would have 8 years to bring those earnings back over to America. On the individual side, the top rate will remain at 39.6%. However, it now applies to households making over $1 million in income. But as you alluded to, not everyone is happy with this plan. And part of the reason is because there is a new limit on the deduction that you can take on your mortgage interest for newly purchased homes. Previously, that was $1 million. Now it's down to $500,000. There's also a new limit on the deduction for property taxes. That's now capped at at $10,000. So you see the National Association of Realtors, the National Association of Home Builders, they've both come out against this plan already. There are also 4 Republicans from New York and New Jersey who are unhappy with the way the state and local income tax is being handled in this. So negotiations are still underway over here on Capitol Hill. But House Speaker Paul Ryan said that he is sure that the commitment to getting this done in the House is ironclad.
Well, the Bank of England raised its interest rates for the first time in the past decade, that's 10 years. Even though the UK's economy is looking pretty grim these days, the rate hike is seen as necessary for getting the nation back to where it was in 2009. The central bank increased its benchmark rate to around 0.5% from 0.25%. Governor Mark Carney emphasized that the central bank had no inclination to embark upon a series of swift hikes, with the central bank suggesting the top speed at which the economy could sustainably grow without generating excessive inflationary pressures was just 1.5%. 2 monetary policymakers dissented from Thursday's decision. Okay, then reacting to the central bank's decision, the FTSE ended high in yesterday's trading session. Well, that was a relative outperformer because we had the French CAC as well as the German DAX, both of them, they slipped in trade. In terms of economic data, well, we had a couple of positives coming out from Germany because the German jobless claims fell by around 11,000 in October and 5.6% unemployment rate was recorded. That, in fact, is another record low.
Okay, let's see what's happening in the world of currency then. The dollar fell to its lowest in a week against a basket of major currencies after Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives released proposals to overhaul the tax code. The dollar index fell to 94.41, its lowest since October 26th.
And in the world of commodities, then crude prices are firm. They're supported by conference sentiment as OPEC-led supply cuts help tighten the market. Analysts, though, have cautioned that the cuts would need to be extended to counter the rising U.S. output.
And from the precious metal space, gold prices were little changed following the announcement of Jerome Powell as the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. The precious metal had pared its gain after touching a 2-week high earlier in trade after Republicans unveiled legislation to overhaul the U.S. tax system. And great news coming in for all the Apple fans as the new iPhone X is set for its global launch today. Apple's latest offering will go on sale today and it promises to be Apple's most powerful phone yet. Now, thousands of Apple users around the world lined up to get their hands on the new iPhone X that became available in major markets. The iPhone X, Apple's 10th anniversary offering, is loaded with plenty of high-end hardware and new features, including Face ID that unlocks the phone when users look at it. It is also pricey, starting at $999 for the entry-level model.
Okay, all right. So that's a good piece of news then for all those iPhone lovers. But on that note, we'll slip into a short break. You come back. We'll focus on the Indian markets. We'll tell you all the cues that are stacked up for us.
Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Well, back home on the Lal Street, the Sensex and Nifty closed flat after a range-bound trade. The mid-caps outperformed mildly with the index gaining 0.3%. But how are the cues stacked up for today? Mangalam joins us now to tell us more. Good morning, Mangalam. A 4-digit FII buy number coming for a second straight day?
Absolutely, Anisha. We'll talk about that. But yesterday, remember, was consolidation. Day before yesterday was the stellar move. So throwback to consolidation after a stellar Wednesday is what took place last Thursday, which was yesterday. Yes, the FII is buying for the second consecutive session in cash market. That is a positive because if you take a look at it, last 2 days they bought about what, 2,071 crores, and this comes on the back of selling more than $1 billion in October, selling more than $3.5 billion in 2017 itself. So then the question that begets asking is that after two days of buying, which happened, you know, for the first time since August, and 2 days of 4-digit buying actually happened for the first time in this fiscal itself. The last time the FIs bought more than 1,000 crores for 2 consecutive days was in March 30th and 31st March 2017 was when the FIs bought more than 1,000 crores on 2 consecutive days. So then one would ask that, why did the markets not go up after the FIs bought 1,000 crores? That's because day before yesterday, remember, they were buying in banks. And yesterday, if you take a look at the delivery volumes, most of them were concentrated towards the pharmaceutical space. Divi, Sun Pharma, Aurobindo Pharma, as well as Lupin, all of them saw high delivery volumes. And that doesn't account for much on the Nifty itself. The pharmaceutical index or the pharma stocks weight on the Nifty is just about 4%. Compare that to 33% on the banks or 13% on oil and gas, which again is because of Reliance. So we'll keep an eye out on that. But the pharma stocks which have started to move higher is something which is heartening, because if you take a look at most of these stocks, they've moved anywhere between 30 to 57% from their 52-week lows. Aurobindo Pharma as well as Cipla and Cadila, they're virtually at that 52-week high mark. We'll keep an eye out on that. But also watch out for the fact that the FIIs, they're skimming some profits at the top. And that is something which is noticed in the index future space. This week itself, they've reduced their longs all the way from 70% down to 65%. But today looks like a fair day given the global setup. We're getting good cues coming in from the Dow as well as the SGX Nifty, which indicates a mild pop in the green. We'll watch out for that and also watch out for a couple of levels. 10,500 on the upside has the maximum open interest on the call side, and on the lower end 10,200 may be a bit of a support given the fact that it is the 20-day moving average.
Okay, all right, Mangalam. What about some stocks we can focus on this Friday?
A lot of stocks we'll focus on this Friday for the markets. Post-Friday, of course, post the markets, of course, it'll be the other liquor stocks that one would be focusing on. Not me, though. Watch out for Hindalco results today, but last evening we got the Novelis results. Decent set is what you said, and we'll keep an eye out on that. Apart from that, watch out for a couple of results that will be coming by today. PFC, Titan, as well as Tata Power. Let's stick with the commodity space itself. Vedanta reported a mixed set of numbers, but I don't know how much the needle will be moved given the fact that more than 50% of this, the company's EBITDA has been factored in already in Hindustan Zinc. Berger Paints, in-line set of numbers. We were working with a 10.5% revenue growth. The company went ahead and posted about 11.3% EBITDA and net profits to nothing really to complain about. Glenmark too, results in line with expectations. A lot of the results yesterday that came in were in line with expectations. Not HCC though. They've reported a weak quarter. The net profit has fallen down by nearly 47%. Ujjivan, the asset quality strengthened, and at the same time their disbursements picked up quarter on quarter, so that is something that one would take heart from, and one would take a large chunk of happiness coming in from the North America Class 8 truck orders. They're up 167% year on year. Even if you account for a low base year on year, they're up 62% month on month. So Bharat Forge, keep an eye out on that one. Also watch out for a smaller company like GNA Axles. Andhra Bank, on the other hand, they've posted a net loss for the first time, so we'll watch out for that too.
Okay, Mangalam, thank you for all of that. But on that note, let's slip into a short break. Up ahead, we will put the spotlight on the earnings that came in post-market hours. Vedanta, Power Grid and Glenmark. We get you the earnings fine print when we return.
Welcome back. Let's turn the spotlight on earnings then. Power Grid came out with its set of numbers post-market hours. Anisha, how were they?
Well, it was a boring set because Power Grid just doesn't surprise us. It is so predictable. The numbers came just bang in line with expectations. The revenue grew by 16%. The margin, yes, surprised a tad bit on the positive side. And this is despite the employee costs going up. So a tad bit of benefit coming in there. And if you look at the profit figure, that one is also up around 14%. The profit came in at 2,141 versus a poll of 2,135. So bang in line with expectations. If you look at the segments, we were expecting the transmission revenue to go up by 16%. That is exactly what has happened. The consultancy and telecom business, though as I've been telling you, is a small part of the business. The telecom business is up around 21%. Now the key thing to watch out as far as Power Grid is concerned is the capitalization and the commissioning number. Now as per the brokerages, the capitalization this quarter came in at 10,000 crores, and this compares with the expectation of 3,500 to 6,000 odd crores. So that comes as a real kicker, and that is why we are seeing the growth coming in the numbers. But remember, remember, this remains lumpy for the company. The company is maintaining the yearly guidance of commissioning of anywhere between 30 to 32,000 odd crores. So no upgrade coming as far as the commissioning target is concerned. But yes, the company remains on track to meet that capitalization target. CLSA, for example, says that the best is yet to come in terms of capitalization. They're forecasting a 40% rise in regulated equity. They've raised their EPS a bit, but the target price has been tweaked to around 260. So overall, a steady quarter. I don't expect major moves coming on either side for Power Grid, but just a tad bit of green. But Nigel, tell us about Vedanta that reported a mixed set of numbers.
That's right. Anisha, just to tell our viewers that in fact for Vedanta, Hindustan Zinc constitutes bulk of their earnings. So if you just take a look at the EBITDA number, more than 50% is already known because we come to know about it through Hindustan Zinc itself. But let's run you through the numbers and what they reported. Top line, yes, there was a growth. Operating margins, well, it was a little bit disappointing. I'll tell you why, because the street would have liked to see a margin expansion. That came in at around 26% approximately. The profit number, though, came in closer towards 3,000 crores. What helped that profit number was a better operating performance, obviously. And the second factor was that, in fact, the finance costs have gradually been coming in lower. It came in lower by close to around 5%. So that's pretty good news. Though the effective tax rate did jump up, what the management has says that phasing out of investment allowance claims, that's what's led to the tax rate coming in at around 24% approximately. They've indicated that they've reduced some debt as well in this year. So that as well should bode well for them. Running you through the segments then, that's the most important part for Vedanta. Well, the aluminium business first. So there, they came in with a number of around 450 crores approximately. Remember, we were expecting a sharp improvement on a sequential basis, and that's what happened. Some part of the street, though, would have liked a better EBITDA number there. The premium rates, that's the LME rates, that in fact did jump up by close to around 24%. Unfortunately, the costs really have jumped up by around close to around 27% on a year-on-year basis. So that's what resulted in some kind of pressure in terms of their margins. Remember, caustic soda prices as well have spiked up, and there was some trouble in sourcing some coal, so that's what hurt them. Shifting focus then to the power business, remember on a sequential basis, those numbers will look absolutely blockbuster because in the first quarter of this year, some of those units were shut. And to run you through those numbers, 366 crores is the number that in fact we are working with. That compares with around 110 crores on a sequential basis, so just keep that in mind. And in fact, on a year-on-year basis, it compares with around 400 crores. What played out well for them? Well, one of their TSPL power plant, there in fact, that did come into production. But Balco has a small power plant. That hurt them. And even Jharsuguda, there as well, the utilization levels were very, very low. It's going through the press release. They indicate that because of coal shortages, that's what impacted them. Oil and gas, well, that's a bulk of their revenues now and bulk of their EBITDA actually, if you're considering ex-Hindustan Zinc. So there as well, if you take a look at it, well, we had the production numbers that were a tad bit lower, but the realizations did come in higher, and that explains why, in fact, those numbers look good. Copper, a pleasant surprise coming in there. There, in fact, we did have the operating profit, that's EBITDA, coming closer towards 400 crores approximately. That's because the TCRC on cents per pound basis, that in fact did expand, so that was good news. And finally, if I take a look at the international zinc business, that did quite well. There, in fact, we did see a positive number coming in from there, while the iron ore EBITDA, there, in fact, we had a bit of a loss there.
Okay, so that was about Vedanta, Nigel, but also tell us about Hindalco, because that will continue to be in focus today, given that its subsidiary Novelis has reported a strong quarter. What are the key highlights from the Novelis number?
Well, Anisha, those Novelis numbers looked very, very good. And in fact, every quarter and quarter basis, they have started surprising us even more and more. So the numbers came in quite strong. My guess is that, in fact, yes, the stock should open up in the green, and then, in fact, maybe the street gets a little bit nervous in terms of how Hindalco's aluminium standalone performance will look like. Well, to run you through the numbers of Novelis, rolled products business, that came in at around, the total sales, total production came in at around 800,000. So that was very, very good. In fact, that's the highest I've seen in terms of quarterly numbers. The auto shipments, they in fact did increase by around 12%. So that's good news. Though the beverage can business, so there the volume growth was only around 5% approximately. Importantly, if you just look at the automotive shipments, so there, in fact, they've increased by around 12%, and now, in fact, their contribution is gradually moving up. Remember, at the end of last year, they contributed close to around 17% of the total mix. Now, the management yesterday on the con call as well is indicating that it's likely to go up to around 25% approximately. And you always look out for the EBITDA number. The adjusted EBITDA number is more than $300 million. So that number is looking very, very good. And in EBITDA per ton, I remember last quarter they did around $367 per ton. Well, this time around on a per ton basis, it was $377 per ton. So that number looked very, very good. And the adjusted profit as well looked very good. Well, for Novelis, the other important, and that's a positive as well. They received some part of the settlement. They had sold a couple of their units, and that in fact did help them as well. So the numbers look quite good for them.
Okay, so the Novelis numbers look good, but what are the expectations from Hindalco itself?
Hindalco, well, the numbers should be quite good, Anisha. Top line growth of around 9% is what we're looking at. Margins, well, we are expecting it to, expand a tad bit to around 12.9%. That compares with around 12.1%. And the profit after tax, so there, in fact, we're working with a number of around 477 crores. The key factors really to watch would be that the LME prices have spiked up on a year-on-year basis. So that's very, very good. That's what plays to their favor. Aluminium, alumina, copper, all of them will play in their favor. So high realizations and volumes, that's what helps the top line growth. Now, in terms of volumes, we're working with a number of around 322,000 approximately. That will be more or less flattish on a year-on-year basis. Though the copper volumes should jump up by around 2 to around 3%. We are working with a number of around 100,000 approximately. Remember the street in terms of aluminium volumes, they're working with the 320 to around 330,000. And in terms of copper, it's working with around 95 to around 102,000 approximately. What are the key concerns? What can impact the margins? Well, higher input costs. As I said, caustic soda prices did spike up. We have had so much of talk that stocks like DCW, Gujarat Alkalis, they have run up. That's an input cost for them. So that will hurt them. Even in terms of Goa Carbon, the numbers look very good. So they had indicated that coke prices went up. That's what affects aluminium production. In addition to that, remember, Hindalco had hedged some part of their output. So they're not getting the current spot rate. So some of the hedging losses could come in to bite them, and that's what could impact the margins as well. In terms of the copper business, well, as I said, Vedanta delivered a positive number both on a sequential basis as well as a year-on-year basis. There was a bit of an improvement. The TCRC margins, though, some part of the street expects that it could be a tad bit lower due to a concentrate shortage, but just going by Vedanta's numbers, we could expect a bit of a surprise there. The other issues are looking at what's going to happen in terms of the margins, outlook for aluminium as well as copper going ahead. And let's wait by, I think, second half of trade, we should get those numbers.
Okay, so that was a lot of discussion on the earnings, but we are not done yet. We'll slip into a short break, but when we come back, we will tell you how Glenmark fared in Q2 and what is Street expecting from Tata Power today. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Then let's continue our focus on earnings. Tata Power reports numbers today. Anisha, take us through the expectations there.
Well, for Tata Power, first the disclaimer coming in that the company comes in with a lot of one-offs, so the numbers may be way off the expectations. But for what it's worth, we are expecting a revenue growth of around 3%. The profit or operating profit is expected to go up by 11% on account of mild improvement coming in the margins of around 190 basis points. The profit in tandem is expected to go up around 26%. Now, in terms of the internals, we are not, expecting any big bang number to come as far as generation is concerned. We are expecting that to remain sluggish, and the realizations also is expected to remain flat. Now, the real growth actually will come in from the renewable business, and that has been the trend over the last few quarters. We have seen that the renewable business is doing better than expectation. They had acquired the Welspun Enterprises asset as far as renewable is concerned. Other than that, Mumbai Circle has been doing well from there for them, and that is what is expected to continue. In terms of the other key thing to watch out for, Mundra has been coming closer to the break-even number. Let's see whether they achieve that or not. We're expecting higher contribution to come in from Marathon as well. Coal prices, they always impact the numbers with a lag because they have a good hedge for that. So let's see whether that impacts or not. But in terms of key monitorables and commentary, we would of course want to know what is happening with the Mundra power plant. Has been there any development when it comes to that? The mining business of the company or the coal business should be doing well given the coal prices. Lastly, any word coming on the progress of the sale of non-core asset is also something to watch out for, Nigel.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much for that, Anisha. Well, from the banking pack, all eyes will be on PNB's asset quality. It reports numbers dated today. Abhishek joins in early this morning to run us through the expectations. Hey, Abhishek, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. So the key number to watch out will be the slippages. Last quarter slippages were above 6,600 crores. So anything below 6,000 crores will be very positive. Now, the loan growth of the domestic book between 8 to 10% will be very positive. Remember that all the PSU banks who have reported results so far have had an improvement in the net interest margin owing to the low-cost deposit share. So the last quarter, 2.56% was the net interest margin on the domestic front for PNB. Any improvement on that will be very positive. The gross NPA was at 13.66%. So any improvement over there owing to recoveries and upgradations will be very positive. We'll also be watching out for management's commentary with respect to their capital raising plans and stressed asset resolutions going ahead. Our polls suggest an NII growth of just 0.9% while net profit to be down by 33.3%. Back to you.
Okay, Abhishek, thank you for that. But time now to slip into a short break. Coming up ahead, Bharat Forge will be in spotlight today as North American truck orders more than double in the month of October. Details on that when we return. Welcome back. Well, Bharat Forge will be in focus today as North American truck orders more than double in the month of October. Naveen is here with the details. Well, good morning, Naveen. We have seen constant improvement coming in as far as the North American truck order is concerned for Bharat Forge.
Constant improvement, Anisha. In fact, apart from Bharat Forge, there are other companies also which will be in today's focus, because remember, these are also supplying their forging parts to North American Class 8 trucks. So the likes of Bharat Forge as well as RK Forgings, MM Bearings, GNA Axles, these companies will be in focus. Now why? Because remember, the sales for the Class 8 truck orders have grown by close to 167% on a year-on-year basis at 35,700 units. On the other hand, on a month-on-month basis also, there has been a constant growth and a big leap of close to 62%. Remember earlier the FTR spokesperson had also told us that there will be a rise in the overall truck sales demand. One, because of an increase in improvement in the economy, as well as the increase in the freight demand. On the other hand, remember the US transportation services are also moving towards more of digitization, which will propel the formal sector and that will aid the overall Class 8 truck orders. So I expect all these stocks to be in green in today's trade. Back to you.
Okay, all right, Naveen, but we're also watching out for Titan as it's reporting its second quarter numbers. Naveen, what do we expect from there?
More or less a decent quarter in from Titan is what we are expecting. Now, in terms of the revenue, we are expecting a jump of 16%. But remember their core, their mainstay, that is jewelry, that is expected to grow by close to 17 to 18% amidst the headwinds that the company has faced in the quarter two. Remember, there were regulatory issues. Apart from that, activation issues were also there. On the other hand, the company's the product mix is expected to improve, which will also help keep the margin steady amidst the company giving discounts in quarter two. So jewelry sales expected to grow by close to 17 to 19%. On the other hand, watches as well as eyewear, which contribute close to 20% of the overall sales. Over there, post GST now, restocking is expected to increase, and that will help the sales to grow by between 5 to 10% for both watches as well as the eyewear segment. Remember, just to go back, they had given an update regarding quarter two, where they had told that the sales were affected due to the regulatory compliance regarding the PMLA Act. But now that stands cancelled, so that headwind is gone off their head. Also, the studded jewelry segment sales, that was lackluster in quarter two. That is what the company had updated. So that will also have an impact on the margins. But overall, steady quarter is what we are expecting for Titan. Back to you.
Okay, Naveen, thank you for that. So a steady quarter is expected from Titan this time around. But another company that delivered steady quarter this time was Glenmark. And Ekta now joins us to take us through the fine print. Good morning, Ekta. Tell us more.
Well, you know, Glenmark was largely an inline set of numbers. There were no surprises which really came in for Glenmark this quarter. They said The street expected that revenue would probably come in at a decline, or rather flattish kind of performance, and that's exactly what it came in at. It was up around 1.5% as opposed to expectations of around a 2% growth. If you look at what happened in terms of the geographies, India was up around 5%, but on a like-to-like basis, if you compare what happened with GST, it was up around 8%, so that was fine. You had the US markets which were down around 5.7%. That's simply because of what happened with Zetia exclusivity sales obviously tapering off, and separately pricing pressure on the portfolio is expected to have probably weighed on the US markets. In terms of the rest of the world markets, it was flat, but what really outperformed was the Western European region for Glenmark. So that was up 48.5%, and Latin America too, which was down, which did well ex of Venezuela. That 21% decline includes Venezuela. If you remove it, it was up around 20% on a constant currency basis. So overall, look good for Glenmark. We have the conference call at 8:30 a.m. So we'll be waiting more details in terms of finer details about how exactly the performance panned out. But overall, it doesn't look like a bad set of numbers, largely in line.
Okay, Ekta, thanks so much for that. Well, time to slip into a short break on.
Welcome back. Well, let's get chatting about commodities with Manisha Gupta now. She's standing by to give us an update of what's happening in the worlds of commodity. Good morning, Manisha. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much for that. It's the base metal prices which are trading mixed, but you have a clear direction as far as the gold prices. For a second straight day, the gold is holding at a 2-week highs, and plenty has happened in US. You have the legislation to overhaul the US tax system, but in the meanwhile, you also have seen the US dollar decline versus major peers. The 10-year Treasury yields are trading at a 2-week lows, and that in turn has been supportive for gold. Also, having said that, the announcement for the next U.S. Fed chief coming in as Jerome Powell is not a surprise. The gold markets had factored it in, and Powell is not seen as very hawkish, and that works in favor of the gold prices. Also, 97% probability of a December rate hike in U.S. has now been factored in, and that is the reason you haven't seen the gold prices run up above $1,300 per ounce. So having said that, we are trading quite good when it comes to in this commodity. The other one to watch out for, of course, would be the crude oil prices. With the upbeat outlook on OPEC-led supply cuts, that has been supportive. We have been holding above $60 per barrel now for all of this week. It's a 2-year high for this, and crude is now looking quite good on the charts. Markets would continue to watch out for further data from U.S., and the U.S. non-farm payroll data today, of course, would give you direction for all asset classes.
Okay, all right, Manisha, thanks so much for that. Well, let's shift focus back to the markets. That's the derivative market. Manglam's back with us. Manglam, what's going on in the derivatives market?
Well, they're skimming at the top levels in the derivatives market. While the FIs are buying in the cash market for the last 2 sessions, they've also sold in index futures for the last 2 sessions. In fact, for the last 3 sessions, if you take a look at the FII long exposure, that has fallen from, 70% at the top of this week all the way down to 65%. Though, nothing really to worry. 65% is still a formidable amount of long positions that the FIIs have. Yesterday, the number that stood out was the index options number, nearly 3,600 crore worth purchase in index options. Looked at the data, it seems as if most of those volumes were primarily attributed to the Nifty Bank weekly options expiry. Yesterday was tepid for the Nifty Bank, but the kind of moves that we saw day before yesterday explained the kind of action that we saw in yesterday's Nifty Bank weekly options expiry as well. On the Nifty front, the put-call ratio rose a mild bit to about that 1.52 mark, and that is because we saw a lot of writing at the 10,400 as well as the 10,200 put. The 10,200 put has added nearly 3.5 lakh shares. The 10,400 put for a premium of 100 rupees means the bulls believe that the 10,300 mark could be a strong support. 10,600 call, who came in for a bit of writing. We'll keep an eye out on that. Also watch out for India Bulls Real Estate, HDIL, India Bulls Real Estate, both of them from the real estate pack are now back in the FNO ban. Fresh longs seen on Hexaware, some shorts cover on Shriram Transport as well as Idea. The telecom stocks have been on a tear. Some positions unwound in IDFC Bank.
Okay, all right, Manglam, thanks so much for that. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up on Power Breakfast. You stay with us. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.